right, so let's move on to episode 4, which is titled The Perfect Opportunity. We're introduced to some people in this one as well. How do you think we should do it? Should we try to just pick a person we're introduced to and tell his story, or do you want me to summarize it all? I don't know what's best. So I'll just jump into it how we've been doing it. So we start off, of course, with a montage, as we always do. And there's a montage at the beginning, and there's 2 boys, and one becomes paralyzed because he fell out of a tree. And the other is who we learn is going to be Simon the Zealot.
He's incredible.
Just not to confuse people, I'm going to do what they eventually do in the show and call him Z, Simon the Zealot. Okay, so his brother has been paralyzed all this time, and in this montage...
older brother.
Yes, he's an older brother. And so during this opening montage, you see them growing up together. And eventually, Simon the Zealot, Z, leaves a note for his older brother, and he leaves and goes enjoys the Zealots. Did you have something you were going to add to that?
I think it's interesting that it almost looks like when Jesse, his older brother's name is Jesse, when Jesse is remembering, or we're seeing the images of Jesse is seeing his parents struggle trying to heal him. And they turn to things that are not faith-based. Mm-hmm. They turn to, I don't want to say witchcraft, but they turn to people who are practicing medicine outside of the faith-based at the time, because they just want to help their child, right? And then it's almost like, and I think we're supposed to pick up on this, it's almost like they created a better son. I think that's the way Jesse feels. They had another child because maybe he was a disappointment.
But I'm just remembering this. So Jesse's watching the birth of this son happen. Right. Mm-hmm. Doesn't the mom die?
His mother dies giving birth to Simon, his younger brother, who we never hear this, but if Jesse believes his parents are conceiving to have a son, like someone who will take care of them. You think about the rules of the time. They needed someone to be the heir so they could basically retire and he would take over, right? Jesse can't do that. He's paralyzed. If they're doing this to basically stabilize their family because he is at fault, maybe subconsciously, he's feeling that he has disappointed them. His mother dies in this birth, which has got to just destroy him on the inside. You know, we're talking, he's like, I think it says he's 14 years old or something, right? So he's 14, he can't walk. His parents have tried things that have gotten him in trouble with their faith. Imagine not being able to go to church because of what you're doing to save your child. And then you're going to have another child, and the wife dies in birth. And then it shows Jesse, like, holding the baby. Like, he's raising his little brother. Mm-hmm. Dad is out working, right? And then Simon is the most beautiful little brother ever. Like, he does everything for him, right? They're playing games. He's including them. He's pushing around in wheel carts.
Sweet.
Like, he is the greatest little brother. I had a little brother, and my little brother was nothing compared to this guy, right? Simon is incredible. And then they see their father get killed by Romans for some uprising. We don't know exactly what for. And that's when Simon decides he's tired of people not living their faith correctly. And it's a weird step because Dad and Mom kind of turned away from faith to try to heal him or heal his older brother. Now, maybe he didn't know that. Maybe Simon didn't know that. But now Simon is fed up with the Romans and perhaps people at the time practicing their Hebrew faith not 100% of the way. And he turns to a religious group, which is later called the Fourth Prophecy we hear about here. It's just a fourth member of the 4 sects of Judaism at the time. But they're the most violent, right? They're basically the original terrorist group who are just going to not be afraid to kill people, anyone who stands in the way of the true Judaism faith and the way it's supposed to be practiced.
As the way they see it.
As the way they see it, right? He turned to that, which is incredible, but we all know people who do the same thing.
And I feel like that's an ongoing theme throughout this episode, and I'm really glad you mentioned, like, their parents. It's turning to things other than God for a solution.
Right.
So we can get more into the other instances.
Is coming here, yeah.
But, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that first one.
Absolutely. So when they get to the present time, Simon the Zealot is off learning his zealot ways, and he's training for an upcoming mission. And Jesse is at this pool. And he's at this pool because, the myth of this pool is that when the bubbles come from whatever the water source is, it has healing powers, and Jesse's trying to get to the pool when it's bubbling up so he can be healed, and he just gets trampled and he has no chance of getting there. But yet he still stays there and tries to hold on to that little bit of hope.
25 years.
Yes, for a long time. So in the midst of all of this, we meet Atticus as well, who is still a mysterious figure.
Dude, he's boss.
He is. He is a mysterious figure, and you can see him change over time. But at the beginning, he's just kind of a...
Shady.
Yeah. He's a spy. I mean, he's a Roman spy who's spying on the Zealots, and he's trying to protect the Romans.
And he's
so,
always eating. You notice that?
I haven't.
He's always got like
Apple
apple,
or-
grapes. It's just like everything's nonchalant. He's 5 steps ahead of everyone.
Yeah.
I never picked up on that.
He's never paying for the food. He just takes it wherever he's at. You're right.
Yeah.
Now that you say that, everywhere he goes, he just reaches in and grabs the food. He just takes the food from him. There's nothing those people can do to him.
That's
Right.
true.
He works for Caesar.
That's true. So he figures out what Simon and the Zealots are up to, and that he's watching them do this training session. And Simon is going to be sent on a mission to kill this Roman elite in this town that they are in. And Atticus, forms his own plan on how he's going to take him down. So Atticus figures out what he's going to do, and he warns the Romans in charge about how they need to protect him, and he tells the Roman leader he wants to make an example out of Simon so he can deter the other zealots from even thinking they can do this to a Roman person. And of course, we find out later he's interrupted, but we'll talk about that in a moment.
Can we get this straight for a second?
Yes.
So Caesar's at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Pilate is underneath him. We don't have Pilate yet in the
he's
episodes,
not in
but
this.
is Pilate like, and then it would be like,
I believe Pilate is one of several under him. I
Right.
believe Caesar, and then Pilate is just one of, I'm guessing we would consider today like a governor.
right.
Mhm.
And then like Quintus is underneath him.
Right.
Which there's a bunch
Quintus
of him.
is sort of
Right.
like the self-proclaimed mayor of the town.
Mayor / sheriff, so to speak.
Yes.
He's in charge of all that and reports into.
But Atticus is like above Quintus,
So-
isn't he?
Yes.
He's like the CIA.
Atticus
He's like secret agent.
is a
Yeah.
secret agent, and I googled those guys because later we hear their thing. They were created by Augustus. This group of people, they were elite. Who's the guy back in Capernaum? The main guy that Matthew reports into.
Gaius.
Gaius.
Guy-
Quintus.
No, Gaius.
Gaius.
Oh, okay.
Then
So they started out as those, and when Augustus wanted to create this rule, he asked for 500 of the best of his role. So those 500 people from all of Rome reported and were trained, kind of like the Zealots. They had to go through training, and whoever passed the course got to form this new society of secret detectives or private detective kind of thing. And they could go anywhere in the Roman Empire, but they always had to report things back to Caesar. They went above everyone else's head, anything they protect. And they were
Okay.
sworn to loyalty and sworn to truth, and sometimes there was like 4 things they had to swear to. But it later references in this season that this man, Atticus, is like the senior one of these guys. Like some people thought he had already retired. He's been around a while. So we don't know exactly. I Googled his name. He was not a real person.
Right.
But the society or the group that he was part of were real, and they did function outside of the realm of their normal Roman law.
I think when you think of the hierarchy too, I'm sure some of these governors, not the right word, but that's kind of how
Yeah.
we're envisioning it, probably have more power than others.
Of course.
Who's the one who eventually puts John the Baptist to death? I mean, that's not a spoiler.
Herod.
That's in the story. Herod. So
yeah.
like he's King Herod, and so he's
Right.
he's real high up there as well.
I'm guessing because it talks about Quintus references that he might be moved
Yeah.
if things don't go well. So if you think about the movement of Caesar. He probably wants his strongest people in the big cities,
Right.
big population. The people who are annoying, I'll put out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Quintus, you go there.
That's a good point. It is important to get that straight, though. So thanks for bringing that up. So while all that stuff with Atticus and Simon the Zealot and Jesse, you see all their little stories playing out. The gang itself, the gang being the apostles and Jesus, are preparing for the Feast of Tabernacles, which, once again, when I first heard this, I didn't grow up Jewish. I grew
Right.
up Catholic. I was like, what the heck is the Feast of Tabernacles? So you learn about a Jewish feast, which is cool. And the Feast of the Tabernacles is also known, it doesn't use this word in the show, but it's also known as Sukkot. And it is an annual pilgrimage festival where the Jewish people all go to Jerusalem, and they go not just to remember what God is going to do and what God did in the wilderness, but they also look ahead to the age when all nations will flow through Jerusalem and worship God. So it's kind of interesting when you think about the Feast of Tabernacles, because it sounds like it's open to everyone.
Right.
Yet
It's not.
it's not, and even the individuals themselves are holding grudges against the Samaritans. So it's like, if you were listening to your own feast of what the Messiah was going to do, you would probably... Now, I think, I don't know how it's celebrated in modern day. It might be more like that. I don't know. But I have no idea. So I don't want to speak out of turn there. But in the way it's portrayed in the show, they're just... It's a celebration to remember what is going to happen.
Yeah.
It's a little hypocritical.
Yeah. But I still think it's cool because it's a dedicated time where families come together and they have a focused goal of remembering what the Messiah is going to do for them. And it's a pilgrimage.
And they have to stay outside, right? They have to sleep outside. Is that the same one? Or is that later? Is this the one where Nathaniel is building the tent?
They're building this
Yes.
big...
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Nathaniel is in charge of constructing a tent
This
out of
big
nothing.
structure.
Yeah, like a pergola.
It was cute.
They're-
That's what Don said, too. It was
Totally
cute. So in the midst of them, preparing the food, preparing the structure, I forget what the tent is actually called. I think there's a name for it. It actually might be Sukkot. I don't know.
It might be.
So Jesus actually invites Simon, John, and Matthew. Simon, not the zealot, but they haven't met yet. Simon, Peter. He says he has somebody he has to meet.
Right.
And of course, before they get there, there's this moment where they're walking into the city of Jerusalem, and there's men crucified on the outside, and you see
How many men?
3.
3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you see 3 men crucified, and there's this moment where, of course, Simon and Matthew and John look at it and move on,
Yeah.
but Jesus, it's one of the times that you see, all right, he's reflecting on this moment and what's coming.
The shot goes in slow motion
Right.
to
It
show his
slows down.
reflection
Yeah.
on
Yes.
it.
It's beautiful.
Well, and Simon the Zealot, when he's walking in for his task
he
at
sees
hand,
that
he
too.
sees it too, and he's like, "What are they up there for?" And the dude's like, "Murder."
Murder.
And he's
Yeah,
like,
that's perfect.
"Oh boy."
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's what he's planning on
He's
doing.
literally
Yeah.
planning on doing
It's a
and
really
Atticus
cool
is off in
parallel.
the corner.
Yeah. So before they actually get to the pool, Z has a moment where he meets Jesse. He goes and
Right.
finds him. And so he's reunited with his brother. It's not exactly a warm moment between the two of them. They argue with each other. Z is trying to convince his brother that the zealot order is good for everyone. And Jesse is trying to tell him that, let's see, I wrote that Jesse is spending his time talking about trying to do everything he can to fix his legs. And Jesse then reads the letter that Z left for him. And there's an important line in this letter. Jesse, when you stand on 2 feet, I will know the Messiah has come.
Mhm.
Foreshadowing, of course. So Z leaves, and then Jesus, John, and Simon Peter and Matthew show up, and Jesus goes right to Jesse and asks him if he wants to be healed. Jesse argues at first, arguing about how he can't get to the water. How is he going to be healed? He can't get to the pool. And so Jesus asks him again, do you want to be healed? And then tells him to get up and walk. And he does. I mean, my words aren't doing justice for what's happening in the scene at all. Like, I can't describe how a paralyzed person, and the actor does a phenomenal job of showing what it might look like when somebody who hasn't been able to walk for virtually their entire life is trying to walk again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and going back to Z and Jesse's conversation, they both kind of like point each other's flaws out, and they quote scripture at each other.
Right.
Like, you're not following because of this scripture. The scripture says this, and then they're both quoting it. They're both pointing fingers. So again, that theme continues of how they're falling short, how they're not truly following God.
And they kind of that they were being each other's accountability partner still, like, to this day. Like, Z is pointing out his, like, hopelessness. Like, how could you be so hopeless right now? And then Jesse's telling him, well, you're going to murder somebody, so how are you going to go do that? Like, it's, even though they've been away from each other for so long, the foundation of that relationship that they built so long ago, like, they're still holding each other accountable today.
Yeah, and it's kind of a similar thing to what their parents were doing to try to heal Jesse. It's something he's continuing to do, is to get into this bubbling pool that's supposed to heal him if they're the first one
which
there.
is pagan.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's controversial because some people say it doesn't turn pagan until after Christ, but it's pagan in thought. It was never set up by Judaism or the Hebrews, this pool, the bubbling water, which I also find, like, I don't know, maybe there were rules to the bubbling water, but every time we see Jesse attempt to get to it, he moves a little bit closer, right? And then for some reason at the beginning of each one, he's farther away. Like, why isn't he just laying in the water?
That's what I'm wondering.
Right?
Yeah.
Just live in the water.
Yeah.
But there's something holding him back. And I don't know if this is supposed to be something that we're supposed to catch on, or if we're supposed to catch that. Something in our own lives that is keeping us from doing what we know is right. Because this isn't right. But Jesse's still not 100% into it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's Jesse in his own mind knowing this really is not going to heal me. It's just I have no hope. I'm down to the last net, right?
It's like grasping for something that it's not the solution.
You know it's not the solution, right? And Jesse's perfectly fine doing that. And he even points out to Z, his brother, you should be here carrying me in. If you carried me in, I would have got there day one.
Yeah.
Right? But
I think that's when Z says the line, I'll know the Messiah's come, because I don't think Z believes the water's going to heal him.
He knows it's not. I also think it's when he comes back to see him 25 years later or whatever, there's a beautiful scene or a beautiful line that Simon says something about the festival he's coming to. And Jesse picks up on, wait, you've been coming here all these years, for 25 years, and you have not come to see me? Like, that's mind-blowing.
Sad.
I forget how he rationalizes that.
I don't think he was really allowed to.
Yeah.
Like, in one, it was definitely an embarrassment on his family that his brother Jesse was here believing in this, kind of false idea. So that was definitely part of it. There was some embarrassment, but I don't know. I thought the Zealots had something like he could get in trouble if he was seen there.
That's right. You're right.
But it's interesting if that's the case that he would choose this moment to go do it, because it's almost like Z knows something big is going to happen. Like, he's going in for a murder at this point. Like, he knows this is different. Like, something big could happen.
We assume this is his first murder. We don't know for sure. It doesn't say.
True.
Right? He has been so good at his training that he has earned the right to murder.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy to think about in the first place. But so maybe he is saying goodbye to Jesse in a way, saying, I'm all in now. If I do this,
I think
how
he
I
is.
can't, there's no turn back.
Doesn't Jesse kind of warn him of what could happen to him? And Simon or Z says, I'm not afraid of dying, or something like that. I think that happens in that dialogue. So when Jesus heals him, he says, get up and take your bed and walk. This sparks yet another Pharisee who sees him get up and move, and he's focusing on the law and says, what are you doing moving your bed on Shabbat? You shouldn't move any... I don't remember what the
ridiculous thing. It's just so
613 rules, Abby. It's 613 rules they have to follow.
And he watched this happen, and he doesn't even... Like, who was that? And he's like, I don't know. He just told me to get up and walk, and I've been... It's just.
Like, do you see my legs right now?
Yeah.
Like, what? Ugh.
And you just, Jesse.
I don't remember that Pharisee's name. I know Shmuel. He's got a memorable name.
Yeah.
A memorable
Yusuf.
Yusuf is not
Yusuf
that man.
is the
He's
other guy.
guy.
Who sort of is like.
Who?
He's
the
sort of like
rumor is-
Nicodemus.
Are you reading
Yeah.
the? Sorry, sidetrack. Are you reading between the lines? Supposedly, the rumor is he will turn into Joseph of Arimathea.
Oh,
Yusuf
okay.
turns into him.
Oh.
Interesting. I've read some stuff where people are trying to say Shmuel turns into Paul, but that doesn't make sense. Paul the Apostle, because he never met Jesus in the literal sense until that moment on the
Right.
way to Damascus. But anyways, sidetrack.
But yeah,
Sorry.
Jesse is just like the epitome. His reaction is the epitome of what Jesus is trying to do. It's joyous.
Joyous,
It's new. It's like it is the redemption of it all, of what the Old Testament prophesied. And you just see the reaction of the Sadducees or the Pharisees there. It's like watching that, you're like, how in the world could you react in that way?
I know. I'm sure there's times where we haven't reacted appropriately, and I say we a lot to try to make me think everybody's like me, but I know I have caught myself being fixated on the rule or
Yeah.
something that you should follow
Yeah.
before focusing
That's
on the
true.
heart of the person.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do because you're like, I feel like I should be living this way, so you want everybody to follow that same way, but everybody's journey is different. But what happens then is it's building to this moment where Atticus is planning to take care of Simon. I said I was going to call him Z, and I keep calling him something else. So Z, this whole thing's happening. And Z is at the moment where he's getting ready to attack and kill the guy. When he's distracted, of course, he sees Jesse walking. And Atticus also witnesses this, and it throws him off. So he follows Z. Z and Jesse have a brief conversation, and it's the first time you see Z not angry, or he's humbled.
Or at least questioning what he's doing.
Yes.
Maybe not. I don't know if he's humble. I don't know if he's happy. But he
Right.
at least, since he's trained so hard, he's got this promotion, he gets the opportunity to murder, he's going to do it. I'm not backing down. This is his first moment where we can see him question his own decisions.
That's a good point. That's correct. And then the last scene is Matthew, Simon Peter, John, and Jesus leaving. And Matthew asked Jesus, why would he choose to do this on Shabbat, knowing that the
You just had to wait 30 more minutes.
Yeah.
You waited 30 more minutes, everything would have been fine.
And Jesus, and this is another hashtag T-shirt. Sometimes you got to stir up the water.
Which is a great parallel to
To the pool,
the pool.
the
Yes.
bubbling of the pool. Yeah.
Yeah. There's when Jesus throws his little jokes in there, I love it. Like, they're all talking about this pool, and Jesus has to, instead of telling them how the pool actually works and how it bubbles, because they're trying to figure out
Yeah.
the logistics. How does this pool bubble anyways?
How often does this thing bubble?
And Jesus is like, somebody will figure it out down the road. Like,
Yeah.
And then Matthew stops in there like, you're trying to figure it out, aren't you?
That's
Classic.
right. Oh, I love it.
But yeah, the thing that I loved the most about this was Jesus went and healed Jesse. He became a believer, but that in turn was sort of like the ripple effect that then went and saved Z from doing the murder, which eventually connected Z to the apostles. So again, it's just that example of how Jesus uses people to save other people.
And it's
And-
weird, but we don't know this Atticus person. He's not a real person. But it almost looks as if he's willing to be saved as well.
Yeah.
Atticus wants to see what's going to happen. This Jesus person he's interested in. So I don't know if, just think about the ripple effect down the line, right? Jesse, he brings Z, who might be bringing Atticus, is incredible. Just think about
It
that.
feels like Atticus might become a figure of some sort too, but I just
Yeah.
don't know who. Just because you can feel that building over
Right.
time as well. But I think he sort of like although Nicodemus is scriptural based, there's so many people who want to dive in, they just can't take that final step.
Yeah.
That final to use a well-known phrase, leap of faith.
Yeah.
Because it does require diving into the unexplainable. Because you can't fully explain with words what God is. We try to by saying God is love, God is this, but like Bishop Barron says this in a lot of videos, like to fully explain exactly what God is impossible.
Yeah.
We can just take what's been revealed to us and base it off that. I don't know. I just blew my own mind. What were you getting ready to say, Jacob? Other than bye, because you're overtime now.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
I don't know. I guess the only other thing I was going to say was Jesse was able to then save his brother. Like it was his brother, and Jesus knew that was the only way to bring Z, because that's what Z said.
references
I will
it later.
believe when I see Jesse walking on 2 feet. So
And in the next episode, Z asks him, "Why did you save Jesse?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Because I had to get to you."
yeah.
Yep.
And how awesome is that for us to think about? Like maybe there's a particular person out there that Jesus is calling us to speak to that only we can get to.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure, Jacob.
I'll leave. Mic drop. I'm out.
Well, I'm sorry you're not going to be here for the rest of this, but
I know.
there's always season 3, buddy. We might not get through all these. We got to see how this goes.
Maybe we just pause and let me join it.
We'll get through a couple more.
No,
but
this is awesome.
We'll bring you
Thank
back.
guys.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the BBHS Seek and Find podcast. If you like what you heard, please like and share with a friend. Be sure to subscribe to all of our social media. You can follow us on Instagram and YouTube at BBHS.SeekandFind. You can also follow us on Facebook at Bishop Brusser High School Seek and Find Ministry. Once again, thanks for listening, and may God bless you today.